So thank you everyone for coming, for taking the time out of your day to be with us here today. And I think when we started work self, like Wolf and I, we had this conversation in Cannes. This was, I don't know, 6 months ago now, maybe. And I think we both really wanted to focus in on part of the work architecture that gets oftentimes neglected. And this is the idea that the employers hold a lot of the power when it comes to hiring. And what we want to do is to empower individuals to identify and accelerate their own potential in order to find work that works for them, to find their calling, to find the thing that they were meant to do. So yeah, Wolf and I, as mentioned, met in Cannes about 6 months ago. I have a coaching background personally. Wolf comes from, if you're familiar with it, the AI trading, so more of a finance background, which has been a really fascinating transition. And we'll talk a little bit about Wolf's transition over the course of the call. And we're lucky enough to have connected with one of our creators and new coaches, Michelle Hillier. Would you care to tell us a little bit about you and your practice?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Hi, Joanne. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. My name is Michelle, and I'm from Toronto, Canada. And we have a mutual friend that connected me to Wolf and Josh. And I'm so grateful. It's been such a neat opportunity to work across the pond with some amazing men on this project, and really just reaffirming what I've created and allowing me to share with more people. So my platform in Toronto is called Breath and Fire, although I expand globally with the magic of online work. And it truly is, it was birthed from my own transformation. So the breath and the fire to me is balance. So I spent many decades on fire, like in the fire mode, where overperforming, wearing the mask, overproducing, overscheduling, overcommitting, which essentially led to a burnout during the pandemic. And I had to, like a phoenix rising, I had to come up from the ashes and find my breath, which meant slowing down. And that slowing down really brought me back to my authentic self. The practices that I bring into my work, and I'll share a little bit more later, but is also what I share with my clients is how I live my life. And that authenticity and that integrity has been the biggest shift for me. So I host retreats, I'm on corporate stages speaking, I lead community classes, and just take what I know has worked for me. And I want more people to feel that balance because it's transformational.
Yeah, I really like that word, Michelle, transformational. I think it's in this time of what I perceive to be, at least, as a big time of disconnection and fear and uncertainty, reconnecting with the self and transforming the self through practice, through repetition, I think is a really, really powerful thing that we can give people. And I think, from the outset, Wolf and I, when we had this conversation, it really was around empowering people in the ways that, we felt empowered, and trying to find the roots that people had felt disempowered and to address those issues. And this is kind of the foundation of Work Self, what became Work Self, is giving people these tools to better themselves and to improve themselves in ways that feel tangible and doable, not high level, woo-woo, I guess, for lack of a better word. There is some woo-woo stuff, but we try to keep it pretty tame. So I think a good starting point actually is maybe talking a little bit to bring in Wolf's story and his story of misalignment in finance. And maybe, Wolf, you could give us just a brief background of what that looked like for you at the time. Oh, sorry, you're muted there, Wolf.
Sure, yeah. As anything in entrepreneurial journey, there's obviously self-reflection experience that leads to some of these ideas that end up becoming a product. Or in our case, work self ethos and philosophy we're trying to infuse in our product. So it stemmed a lot from my personal experience. I've built my career in its first iteration in capital markets, both as a quantitative structure on a trading floor, consultant to the capital markets financial institution arms on their technology build or trading systems build. And then in the latter part, as a vendor through my AI suite of algos that we're placing into these operations. And not to dwell too much in terms of the functional sides of the industry and that job, the misalignment that I felt was really focusing singularly on, time and money in the simplest way. How many meetings a day, how many projects a week, how much revenue or how much valuation uptick my company is getting. And then everything around me, including myself, became a unit of productivity in my mind. And that singularity that didn't integrate how I felt physically, emotionally, in my own career journey, did lead to, depletion. But the good and bad news about my experience about that period of misalignment was that there was no single point in time I can say, oh, that's when I realized that there's misalignment, or because of that. It's basically a years-long slow burn with a lot of actually physical exemplifications, but my mental state didn't actually allow me to say, oh, I'm gaining a lot of weight. That's a signal that I'm misaligned in my career. Oh, I am, short of breath in the middle of the day. That's a signal that my anxiety is through the roof and it shouldn't be. Oh, I'm getting agitated at my employee, unnecessarily perhaps. That's a signal that I am not being an empathetic, emotional leader, which is a job requirement. So, many of these iterations and examples later led to formation of work self as an idea that has both work and self in an integrated way together. And only, like that, our vision is people can truly move forward with alignment, with the state of flow, which is really kind of being happy and productive at the same time at your work function. Now, we are witnessing unprecedented AI disruption across all industries and all jobs. And what made work self relevant more so now than ever before is that we're all asking ourselves, like, well, I have an intelligence in my pocket that is, probably better than me at writing things or analyzing things or even correlating the logic of things. So where does that leave me? And what does that mean for my work self? And I hope that we will address that a little bit today.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And to go back into the experience for a second, you said it was sort of like a collection or an aggregation of small changes, like weight gain or shortness of breath, these small moments that kind of existed in the larger infrastructure of what was this productivity unit. So what do you think is different now on the other side of that, what didn't you know before?
Well, I didn't know that's unsustainable until a semblance of crash happened. And post the crash, realizing that's unsustainable basically then rewires the intention. And then the intention leads now to be integrated. How successful I am in my integration journey and is a different question. And I think that's very individual for all of us. And how fast. But the intention on my part is there and it's clear. And that leads to better outcomes, maybe slowly through repetition in intentional trial. I kind of am leading myself to the new work self state I want to be in. And that state is much more empathetic, towards my own, talents, needs, and desires, and hopefully to stakeholders around me.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point around the individuation, and not just that, but the process, the journey that you go through. And, Joe, both Joes, I'm sure you've seen, like, the arcs of people's careers. And Michelle, I'm sure you see this all the time in your work, is like, it's not a one and done. There is no silver bullet. There's no, magic wand that you wave and it changes things for you forever. It's work, it's process, it's repetition. And we're going to speak a little bit about that today. And I think, I see that as well in my coaching practice. Is some people will show up to a session and be like, okay, what do I do? How can you fix this? And here I am sitting in a chair and I don't know anything about their life. I don't have any special skills. I listen and I reflect. And the truth is that's all we can do. It's all we can do for ourselves, and it's all we can do for other people. So to launch into this science section, we're going to talk a little bit about how habits are formed, how the sort of neural processes go, and how that impacts sort of downstream on our behavior and ultimately our identity. So the whole sort of thesis of this webinar, as it were, is that repetition or habit formation is reprogramming, is identity formation. So when we form habits, we also form our identity. And so to kind of cut to the beginning of that, I think the core of habits are mental shortcuts. They're ways to make our days easier. And I'm sure we've all experienced this. At the beginning of your day, you have 10 tasks that you need to do. You need to wake up, you need to stretch, you need to go get your coffee, you need to go brush your teeth, you need to come downstairs, you need to tell your kids, if you got them, that they got to get up because they got to go somewhere. And these are all habits. If you think back throughout your day, these are not things that you might be mentally checking them off a checklist. They're not things that you really focus your attention on. They almost happen in the background. And when you think about, when somebody asks you, how's your day? You don't say, I woke up, I brushed my teeth, I went downstairs, I got coffee. It's because the neural architecture is designed to put that stuff in the background so that you can focus on the foreground, the important stuff. And every time that we repeat an action in the same context, the brain is kind of, it's going, it's cycling, its cogs are going, this seems pretty useful. Let's automate it. I do this every day. I do it 30 times in, 6 hours. Let's just automate it because that's how I'm going to save some mental energy. So ultimately, the brain is one of efficiency. It's an efficiency architecture. And by following these repeatable formats, we have the cue, which is the sun rises, the action, which is I get up, I, stretch, I do whatever I need to do, and the reward, which is I feel ready to start my day. And once a loop is repeated enough, so through this cue, action, reward architecture, we move it from conscious control, so something that we are setting out to do, to unconscious control, which is something that happens in the background. It happens in the back of our mind. And actually, if you look at like the brain structure, this happens in two different places. The conscious control is the prefrontal cortex, but when something becomes a habit, it's no longer in the prefrontal cortex. It kind of moves down to the forebrain. It's part of the basal ganglia structure. And so you have this idea that things that used to be, difficult, you had to put the checklist up, you had to check it off. Now you go grocery shopping and you say, I need that, I need that, I need that. And it becomes automatic. And I think the interesting part about this is that the result is good. We're expending less mental effort. But I think the important trade-off that we're making is that we have less awareness of our habits. When something becomes repeated, it becomes automated, we have less intentional control over the result. We have less meaning that gets injected into it. So because the brain is wired to have this predictability and reward structure, there's something interesting I think that happens with a lot of people is that they get stuck in habits that don't serve them. So the loops can work for us in the case of, a morning walk triggering calm. I walk my dog and I feel better about the day because I got sunshine, my body's stretching, I feel ready, versus I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I'm going to doom scroll because there's this pile of emotion up here and I don't want to deal with it right now. It's too big, it's too messy, I can't do it. And so in one case, you have this feeling of readiness, feelings of calm, feelings of I can get through this. I'm ready. I can, I can make it work. And in the second scenario, you have this avoidance, this everything is too much. Let me just turn my brain off for a second. And I don't think that these are not moral judgments. I think sometimes doom scrolling can really serve a purpose, but the question becomes, if we do it regularly, who do we become? How do we move through the world? How do we conduct ourselves? And I think we see this a lot in a career context. So both Joes, I'm sure you might have managed people in the past. And when you have a really solid one-to-one framework, you really get into it, right? You're like, I'm checking in with you, you're checking in with me. I know what your projects are. I know what your challenges are, the blockers. We're speaking the same language. We're checking in. And, I've had one-to-ones. I come out of that meeting and I feel like $1,000,000. I'm like, I know what my priorities are. I'm ready for the rest of the week. I'm pushing forward on all accounts. Or I feel, oh man, there was something that came up and I'm so glad my manager was there to help me through it. If you have a good manager, that might be the requisite for it. But then we also have these things that are maybe less positive. You have Slack notifications constantly pinging you. You have emails that says, 10,000 on red. And every one of them is like, ooh, well, if you just opened this, it would be red. But then that means that you have to take an action, and then you have to make another decision, and then you have to, move through that whole process. And so it can be really, I guess, tempting to jump into those notifications to say, I'm going to entertain this. I'm going to spend just 5 minutes on this. But when is it ever really 5 minutes? So it oftentimes disrupts your focus, takes you away from the things that you were doing already, and prevents you from having that deep work, that deep flow that you want to get into when you're working. So these are just examples of how habits can be positive and intentional, or they can be potentially negative or distracting, or even in some ways harmful to our daily lives. And I think if you've spent any time on our website, we speak a lot about rituals. And this is where the woo-woo part comes in. So you might ask me, what's the difference between a habit, so something I just repeat every day, and a ritual? Any guesses?
I would say a ritual is probably things that are more self-nurturing, whereas a habit is I get up, I take a shower, I have breakfast, I go get on a train, things like that. But self-nurturing stuff is what I'm doing for myself to keep my own energy up.
Yeah, I love that, Jonathan. That's a really great point. Joe, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think it's also intentional. Like to Jonathan's point, the unconscious part is like there's no thought in your point of like getting up, getting moving. There's not like I'm standing thinking about that. But with a ritual, there's more intention in terms of a practice around it.
Yeah. And I think both of your points kind of strike on that. It's that piece of intentionality. And what intentionality really is self-injected meaning. I'm doing this because this is meaningful to me. It has some connection with my internal, intrinsic identity. And as you said, self-nurturing. So it's feeding something within me. It's feeding something that I find helps me grow or helps me flourish, helps me be mindful, helps me be present. And so that difference, I think, that meaning difference is a really important distinction between habits and rituals. Rituals carry intentional choices, not just choices, but they are also displays of who we are as people. They present, I'm going to do a breath work in the morning. I'm somebody who makes time for myself, makes space for myself to be able to breathe and be ready for the day. And so eventually when we stack this all up, habits, rituals, the harmful ones as well as the helpful ones, this is essentially who we become. We become our habits. If you look at your calendar, how many events of last week's are carrying over to this week? How many check-ins do you have that happen weekly, monthly, annually? How many board meetings? How many even events with friends? Oh, I'm going to go to the pub this weekend. Okay, well, that becomes something. Oh, I love going to art galleries, so I'm going to do that once every 3 months. And so our architecture of our lives becomes the structure of our habits, the things that we fall into, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, and that ends up being how we spend our time. And I think you see this a lot with parents, is that, you move from becoming a whole individual to becoming a parent, because you do that 24/7. It's a time block throughout your entire day at all times. You are a parent. And I think, when that happens, the question becomes, where does the meaning go? Who do we become through our habits? And so I think that's a good place to to bring in Michelle Hillier. We could talk a little bit about the work that you do, your perspectives on this, and talking about how these habits can be nourishing, how rituals can give us meaning, and how we can use that to propel ourselves forward, and to also, to help the people that we love also move forward, to have healthier relationships, to have healthier boundaries, and to nourish our identities. So, Michelle, I think the first question that I have for you is, in terms of your practice, how do you see habit formation or rituals being a part of that?
Yes. So my practice is, again, coming back to this idea of breath and fire. And I like using the term awakening your flame. So my practice is about, we all have a unique flame. We all have a unique body. We all have a unique way of moving. We're all so different. So this idea of a cookie cutter habit or ritual is not going to work. And I've seen it not work. When I've tried to give the same program for the same people, it has to be so individualized to meet their rhythm of their body, their lifestyle, their schedule, their likes, their dislikes, like what they're going to grip onto, and so that it becomes an actual habit and ritual. So this idea of, we all have this flame inside of us. Sometimes it's a raging inferno, sometimes it's a pilot light, but it never goes out. And it's about reigniting that spark that we have inside of us through breath, through movement, through self-awareness. You know how big that is? Like just holding yourself. I always ask people to just, hold your chest, your heart, and just like, how am I doing in there right now? And like, be honest, because we like to think, oh, we're fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. But to actually name it, like, oh man, I'm anxious right now, or I'm overwhelmed, or even like, I'm okay, but I'm at capacity right now. Like right now, for example, I feel like this week I'm on a sleep deficit, just with the Blue Jays games, with some other, I came off a retreat last weekend. So I know I'm like, I'm okay, but I'm in a sleep deficit. Like it's naming it, because, you name it to tame it. That's a saying that it loses its power once you've named it. So if we keep holding on to it and gripping it, it can get worse and worse. So with that, my practice is all about having people and myself move intuitively. Like that word is new for me. I was always about performing, like performing at the gym, performing at work, performing at meetings. And that was exhausting, because the performing is taking me out of my intuitive knowing, like who I am as a person. And so for me, the body's such a big part of my work, and getting into the body again through breath, through movement, meditation. And if I can teach people and share with people how powerful it is to move intuitively, which means checking in with yourself and doing it in a way that feels good and not what it should look like not copying the teacher on the video, or trying to mimic something or think it should be a certain way. There's no shoulds. And this is like big deprogramming of how we are conditioned as kids. Right, wrong, gold star, good girl, good boy. Like even as we move our body, it's got to be our way. So that's really about the intuition, and really that invitation to come back home to yourself. So my practice is about making it work on a very individual level and a very intuitive level.
Yeah, and I think that there was something in there, the idea of this spark that we all have,
Mm-hmm.
and that is intuitive knowing, as you said. Could you maybe expand a little bit on how we identify and connect with that spark?
Well, I think we have to think about things that I always ask clients, like, when was the last time you felt joy. And I define joy as something you do where time doesn't exist. Like, you happy is one thing, but joy, bliss, that kind of moment where when you do it, you know you're in the zone. You're in the flow. Whatever, runners have their high, yogis have the flow, the zone. And when you're having people like think about that, and when you're in the flow, in the zone, in joy, you are really nurturing your flame. So it's even finding, and these rituals, we often think they have to be about yoga, breath work, walking. It can be as simple as like sketching, talking to a friend, baking, cooking. Like, these are rituals that are good for us because they're inviting some joy. And when we're in joy, we're in a really heightened state. Our frequency is high. So if you look at the emotional frequency, and there's 22 emotions, joy and love are at the highest. And when we're in those states, it's just, we're in the right place.
Yeah, how do you see that, connecting and making changes in terms of your clients' days?
Clients' days?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just, my clients and people in my life, my friends, I feel like my friends are also in a way my clients because I care and love them so much. And I talk about this, the way I live. They're observing big changes they've seen in me. And it's a lot of curiosity conversations, which I really appreciate. But I think what I hear from them is that it's this all or nothing mentality. Like, I don't want to, and fear of falling off something. So afraid, the fear to start. Does that make sense? Like the fear to even, oh, that sounds great. But then our brain tells us if we get into that and then we miss a day, or, we've fallen off, and it's the guilt that kind of kicks us. And they see habits as a discipline and not as like a relationship with self. That's a big one for me. It's not a discipline. It's a relationship that you are building with yourself. And so my message is, when you fall off, you can always start again. I've just been on a 3-day busy myself in output mode, I say, like presenting, speaking, teaching, and my personal habits have fallen off. And man, I feel it. My neck's a bit weird in the morning. I'm a little bit more irritated and short with my son. Like, there's just things that I observe, but then I have to go, okay, again, hold, how am I doing in there? I'm okay, but I'm in sleep deficit right now, but it's okay. I can start again tomorrow. It's not a problem. And that's the problem I think we have with people, is that it's this all or nothing. And if I fall off, I can't start again. My new schedule's off. I'm done. Start tomorrow and start small, right? And habits are there for, if we can reframe habits as self-support and not self-control, that's a powerful message.
That is powerful. I wanted to ask Josh and Michelle maybe just to reflect on this notion of negative habits or habits that are not serving us. I think contrarians in the mix would say, oh, well, it's really hard to establish positive habit. It, takes time, it takes repetition. I may have never done it successfully. Then the next question is, do you have any habits? Are you accustomed to doing things a certain way yourself? And I think all of us would admit yes, even, if we say it's hard to establish new ones. And then the question becomes, oh, so you do have some habits. Do they serve you? Or what do they serve? And then maybe the answer is, I don't know. They were there forever. I don't switch them up with intention. I don't evolve with new ones. I don't introduce new ones and retire the old ones. And my question would be, why? Or have you observed clients that have not done it or have done it successfully?
In terms of changing habits?
Yeah, or playing with the intention of forming new ones and getting rid of the old ones.
Oh, I think there's so much fear around that. And my mantra is, in all the work I do, like, you can't get it wrong, and no one believes it. They think they can get it wrong. There's so much fear that if I try something new, I'm not going to do it perfect. I'm not going to, there's no gold stars. Nobody's rewarding you, but I think it's our reward loop system that, no one's going to reward you for doing a 5-minute meditation in the morning. but you're going to feel the reward. You're going to reap the benefits personally throughout your day, your week, your month. But it's fear, and it's what am I going to get for it? Well, they're going to have to find out, and it's going to be a slow burn. It's not a quick fix, and I realize that.
And does that lead to this question of awareness as a necessary ingredient to be able to measure the benefit? Because if you're not calculating your feelings, you don't have ability to measure the benefit.
Yeah, I think there is no like one stock answer for that, and I think it's individual. But I do think that those check-ins are so important. But I think a lot of it's when I see with clients who have been doing something, let's say for a couple months, they're not going to see it day by day. But I'm going to guarantee after I don't know, what is it, 90 days of a habit can be habits formed, that they're going to see these subtle changes that might not be, oh, I'm meditating every day and now I can meditate longer. No, in your real life, then you're less short with people. Your ability and your capability to be more level when disruption happens in your life, that is coming from your habits. That's always a misconnection, a misalignment with meditation. Is like, Michelle, I need to meditate. Yeah, because I'm so stressed at work. I need to okay, when that's going on, drop in. It's like, no. That's not when you do it. You do it in the morning to set yourself up. It's like you're stacking these little tools inside yourself. So when shit hits a fan in a situation, your body knows how to come down. You've given it practice. So yeah, it's tough. Wolf, it's tough because people do want quick fixes. How am I going to know it's working? It's a slow burn, and it's patience that my clients have to have. And then they're like, I get it. It's hard though.
Yeah, Jonathan, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, I was just wondering, we live in such an immediate gratification kind of world. How do you get clients to do 90 days, which to them probably seems like a lifetime?
Well, I'm going to flip it on Joe. Joe was one of my clients. So he was very disciplined with some of the things we're doing and created some new habits. Do you mind sharing, Joe?
Yeah. So for me, when I'm listening to what the discussion, the proof is in the practice. So I think, often we look for the validation externally, right? So with Michelle, I think one of the things that was a simple practice for me was a 5-minute meditation every morning. So that was the first thing I shifted myself to do when I put my feet on the ground, was every day, start your day with the meditation. And what I shared with her was what I started to notice was how I was no longer reacting, but how I was responding. That was my own self-observation, was I'm not reacting to that the way I had in the past. I'm now taking that breath and I'm responding to it differently. So that was certainly, one piece of it. The other piece of it was her commentary around you can't get it wrong. So it's so individualized in terms of who you are and how you approach it. You can't get this wrong, Joe. It's just a matter of, kind of thinking about how you repeat it and what the impact of that repetition has on your life every day, and who you are right now and who you want to become, in terms of your identity, and how that starts to shift. That's what I started to feel when I did it continuously. And then if I take a pause, it's exactly what she said. I take a pause and I'm like, why did I do what I just did? Why did I react to that differently? Why did I not? And it's exactly what kicks back in. It's like, oh, you didn't meditate today or for the last 2 days. That's why. But that's seemingly, Jonathan, what works for me, right? As an individual, I think to what Michelle had said, it's different for everybody in terms of what that ritual looks like.
And if I can maybe just build on that a little bit, because we are actually asking the same question in our product development mode at WorkSelf, right? How do we help people establish habits and then raise them into the rituals and then raise them into what we call identity loops that are identity forming towards the goal they self-choose who they want to become? Well, it's I think, established on the call, it's not an easy thing to do, right? But latest tech, agentic AI prompting that's not being asked to do something, but it's being informed about our intention and it's prompting us, can help on an accountability level. Just simple reminders, time blocks. Hey, we're on this journey together. Did you do your meditation, right? Or, hey, the week has passed. There's been 3 logged, 2 are missing. How are you feeling? So it's kind of self part of work self in your pocket working in cohort with you. The other part of it is just this kind of belief that we are trainable. And I'm going to say something a little bit more controversial, that we are an operating system. And that word has a lot of kind of contrarians, naysayers out there coming in saying we're not a machine. It's machine versus being human. It's a robot versus machine. We're not talking about that, actually. We're talking about we are trainable with intention. And when you reduce the kind of ingredients of how we get there, that means we are operating system that will follow certain practices and repeat them until they go through that journey of, habit formed, ritual formed, identity formed. So I want to leave it there, but I think that's really kind of where perhaps work self product can help as well.
Yeah, I think sort of an expansion on that, Jonathan, it really is a good question of how do you make something like that happen? And what I've observed as a coach is that, a coach's entire job is not to find the client solutions. It's to raise the client's level of self-awareness so that they can empower themselves to create solutions that work for them. And it's so interesting because I experience this all the time in my life, that when I make changes to the way that I'm doing something, it's not me that notices first. It's the people in my life. And they'll say things like, oh, you're really chipper today. Did you do something different? And then that prompts me to be like, did I do something different? Because in my mind, I just went through my daily routine, but maybe I did add something extra and I just didn't become conscious of it because I've been doing it for 30 days or I've been doing it for 60 days. But it did make a difference. And, my dad told me on the phone yesterday, we were having a chat and he was like, oh, you sound healthy. And I was like, yeah, I am healthy. Yeah. And it wasn't until that I got that feedback externally, and we're social creatures, we're wired for that response from other people. It wasn't until I got that feedback that I was like, oh yeah, it's because I've been taking care of myself more this week. It's because I have invested the time to sleep more, to eat more, to do more exercise, to get more sun or a sun lamp when it's not available because it's London. So yeah, I think it's a really powerful question, and it's actually one that I want to reflect back on all of you as we move into this ritual mapping exercise. So does everyone have a pen and a paper?
I do.
You always have a pen and a paper. Yes. So for this exercise, I want to turn that reflective lens inwards a little bit. And we're going to create 3 columns on the page. The first column is going to be titled Tools. The second column is going to be titled Time. And the third column is going to be called Change. Tools, time, and change. And so what we're going to do in this exercise is sort of along the lines of what we talked earlier about habit formation. We have cue, action, reward, or in some cases, reward, cue, action, reward as our habits stack, and they form our identities. What I want to do now is to reflect on, firstly, the tools that we have in our lives that, as Michelle would say, bring us joy. What are those moments of joy? Is it playing catch with the neighbor's daughter? Is it swimming in a pool? Is it watching the sunset? Is it getting really focused at work and, getting like a 2 hour time block and just doing something that you wanted to cross off your list? What are those moments that bring you joy, that make time slip away? So after you have a few on the page, and feel free to continue logging them as we're going through, the second column is all about time. What are the inflection points during your day that you find difficult? Is it when you have, and we're talking about specific times here, is it when you have back-to-back meetings? So is it the transition from one meeting to another meeting? So we're talking individual circumstances. Maybe it's the transition at lunchtime. You go for lunch and then you come back from lunch and you just feel unfocused. You feel like, oh, I've just totally lost my train of thought. Maybe it's your kid comes in the room and interrupts a work call, and you just feel totally thrown off. It's not their fault, but you've still lost your train of thought. Maybe it's your friend who invites you out for a drink at the bar, and that drink turns into 2 drinks, and then 3 drinks, and before you know it, your evening is gone. So I want you to think about really tangible circumstances and times in your life that you find difficult. So now we have 2 things. We have tools, the things that bring our energy up, that allow us to focus, that allow us to thrive and flourish. And we have time, the parts of our lives that might feel disrupted or challenging or boring, maybe in some cases. And so this last column is change. If we take tools from the first column of joy and apply them to the second column, time, what is the change that we can create?
And how would that work as an example, Josh?
Sure. So the time, maybe for me, is getting back into a work mindset after lunch. The tool might be, I love walking your dog, Wolf, Butter. I love spending time with Butter. So the change is I'm going to give myself 5 minutes after lunch to play with Butter, to bring my energy up, to get me ready to work.
Got it.
So you're stacking good ingredient with a moment where you need it.
Exactly. Mhm. The intention of this exercise is not to be perfect. This is, as I said before, it's not a silver bullet. It's really not anything. It's just an intention on a page right now. We took stock of our lives in the time column. We raised our level of awareness about the way that our day flows and what the challenges are in that day. We've put together a toolkit. We have an idea of the things that bring our energy levels up, the things that help us focus, that help us relate to others, that maybe allow us some time to breathe, to introspect, to pause, and then move forward with intention. And then we have the change. And ultimately, as is with all the tools at WorkSelf and any tools in coaching, the change part is up to you. Can you find a way to integrate just one of these rows into your life? Can you find a time to give yourself that space to be intentional and to move forward in a way that you know from your tools category is going to bring you joy, is going to bring you calm, is going to give you focus? And so I think that's what I want to leave you all with is, where and how can we affect the ways that we move through this world that is full of disruption, that is full of uncertainty, but ultimately come back to yourself. And before we close off here, did anyone have any questions or, comments, I guess, reflections?
I can maybe just volunteer from conversations we're having, obviously, with different kinds of stakeholders. Some are, testing our product. Some are coaches looking at their practice, saying, hey, how can I help my clients accelerate in the coaching relationship or get better results or, whatever it is. And it's, hard to form habits. We've already talked about that. And we've talked about this notion of operating system. We are trainable. And that is, great. Now we have AI disruption. A lot of people are thinking about their career trajectory. Where can I go? And how all this ties into me either growing in my existing job or finding a new job that's more in line with what and who I am or who I want to become. So that's where oftentimes, if you haven't practiced and you're not in tune with these parts of self that are perhaps a little more intangible, a little bit more about how I feel, how my body feels, what could happen, and I've seen this in people we talk to, is you're prioritizing, again, time, money, unit of productivity, and you continue to be on a hamster wheel where my last job title needs to be the same as my next job title, and then it's just the job title and the logo. And that's completely outside in. And what we don't want WorkSelf users to get to is get a new job, and then a year later in the same situation, get a new job, and a year later in the same situation, get a new job. Because it's not an issue of getting a new job. It's whether that is intentionally who you want to be or who you want to become, and how aligned that is or how spoken that is from inside out approach by you and not by chance of you having that job title out of school and then sticking with it. And if that's the case, and that was a lucky coincidence, that's great, but oftentimes it's not. And it requires getting rid of some of the habits and thought processes or identities and forming the new one. So, we see people kind of realize that even the calls and conversations we have with them through testing the product. And then the appreciation of a ritual and practicing it and repeating it becomes a bit stronger. You kind of follow through or tend to follow through a bit more. when you realize it can help me, get a better career. I mean, it can help you also if you are all about, growth, get a better pay, get more, positive impact to all of the people around you in that job. So it's not zero-sum game. It's actually fully what I would call, if anything, stayed from my finance career, accretive transaction of your time and impact, right? It's a compounding of positivity for the finance folks out there, and I hope
Compounded positivity.
work self delivers on that.
I love that. All right. Joe, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, I think, Wolf, in terms of what you're saying, and having sat in the HR space my entire career and worked a lot with leaders and employees and all of in that space is when I think about the work I did with Michelle, and I'll reflect on that, it really is the support I got in that self-inventory. When I say the inventory of me, right? Because that I don't have a full scale picture if I'm looking at all those other pieces, without understanding who I am, what I want to be, and what I want to get out of that in my own career. I think there's a lot of the external factors that I'm pulling into that in terms of how I want to grow up in my career, what that next trajectory is. But who am I in all of that? And when you stop and do that inventory with the help of someone, it's like, wow, maybe what I was thinking might shift slightly.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? But I don't know I might not know where to start unless I have somebody that can help support me in that.
Yeah.
Did you have something to add there, Jonathan?
Oh yeah, I just had one last question, and it's like how do you get from support to and Michelle, I think you said something about this earlier. But what do you say to someone who thinks that working on self is simply going to a coach every other week and doesn't sort of take responsibility outside of that?
Oh man. I always say it's on them. Like I can only do and say so much, and they can come and show up in their one weekly call. But if they're not doing it, I can't make them. Like that's the thing. It's sort of on them. And that's a really weird response, but lots of, positive messaging, encouragement, inspiration, but again, it comes down to them. And that's a tough one, but it's just sharing, when I thought I just, after Wolf's shared there about what work self being this, we talk about balance a lot, but I like to see work self and work life as more integration. So the person I'm showing up to at work and as a parent and at the dinner table and with my friends, it's the same. And that's what rituals can help rewrite identity, is when they can become who you are. And Josh, you mentioned this when someone said, wow, you seem so happy or good. I'll have random people be like, you seem, I don't know, but really, I'm like, I'm good. That's why I'm taking care of myself from the inside out through rituals. Like Work Self is developing this incredible app these guys are working on. So I'm really, really honored to be part of it. So.
And Jonathan, I think one of the things that you might be interested in is looking into the readiness for change model. There's actually a bunch of steps that happen before we get to the point of change. And all of these pre-steps are almost like prerequisites for the ability to move things forward. And not to get too historical about it, because I see this all the time in my coaching practice, but I like to go back to the French Revolution, right? How bad did things need to get in people's individual lives to come together as a collective to overthrow the government? What needs to go wrong for someone to feel so compelled to pursue change? Because ultimately, as humans operating on this almost autonomous system, do we have that level of awareness that says, I need to take a week off because I'm just feeling super overwhelmed? Some people do. Some people have that circuitry. Many people do not. And so, I think it's important to kind of understand where somebody's at in that readiness for change model. Are they ready to have that conversation? Because you can't force them, and they'll only know when they're ready.
And I would just add maybe one more contextual point before we wrap up. In the AI disruption kind of phase that we're in now, with a lot of jobs being either automated, I mean, juniors out of school in campus recruitment, graduate hiring programs are not getting hired because Fortune 500 companies don't have a need for junior labor. It can be automated with AI. So we're not hiring our youth. So think about societal impact of that few years down the road. But that aside, if we're thinking about the integration of AI into workforce and us being basically in a symbiosis operating our jobs with AI, what is the value add that we're providing? Because it's not the same as it was before. And in that analysis, we're coming to some indicators. The value add would be in being empathetic, interpreting the data, adding meaning, emotion, tonality, and human-centric to the data, to the piece of research and analysis. And that will be differentiator of my performance going forward, as we all work with AI, not against it and not without it, but integrated with it. And then it becomes, am I well-versed as an individual to do these differentiating things that are now becoming more important for my job, because I've been trained in a different world, in a different set of tools, where being empathetic perhaps wasn't my strength or wasn't my differentiating factor. But now it needs to be not just to find myself and cope with my career trajectory, but also to differentiate using AI at the job. So there's a bit of a meta thought there, but I think it's very relevant, especially now as we're all thinking about it.
I hope that helped, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Well, thanks everyone for coming. We really appreciate the time that we spent today. I think, I hope that it felt useful, that it felt, what's the word that my profs always like to use? Generative. That's the word. It felt generative and got you thinking a little bit about your own life and also the lives of the people in your lives, in your social networks, and how you can bring forward that sense of change, and how you can create habits and rituals that help support your identity. I'd like to thank Michelle for coming on and helping with us with the insight side of things and sharing her perspective as well as the experiences of her clients. As a fellow coach, I know that you're always trying to walk the line between how much do I share, how little do I share. So I really appreciate all of the insight that you shared with us today. And where can people find you, Michelle?
Yes, they can find me at breathandfire.com, and that's a more dynamic place to find me is Instagram. It's my handle is Michelle_breath and fire. And I did not plant Joe to be here, by the way. That she surprised me. Say, okay, I need one of my clients to come on. No, this was a complete surprise. So
Yeah, it's very last minute.
Pretty symbiotic.
I love it.
We're happy to have you. Thank you also, Josh, for keeping us organized.
Thanks, Josh.
Of course. I'm sorry we went a little bit over time here, but I appreciate you all nonetheless. Anyway, you can find this recording. It'll be up on our site on the event page, probably in the next day or so as we get it edited. And I hope to see you in the next Work Self event, which is, I think, in mid-November, and I think it's in person. Unfortunately, I can't bring the UK to you, Jonathan. So you might have to come to the UK. It's just the way it is. I'm sorry. But if you're in town, definitely let us know, and we'll see you there. So thanks so much for everyone's time, and hope you have a great rest of your day.